Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the service. As you're taking your seat, can I ask everybody to put your cell phones to silent mode at this time? The funeral service will be conducted by Rabbi Rachel Heaps, Rabbi Paul Cohn, and Cantor Leanna Mendelson.
Friends, as we begin this memorial tribute of love to Alan's life, there is a ritual that we perform. The ritual is called kriya. It's a Hebrew word that literally means tearing. It comes to us from the Bible. When our ancestor Jacob was told that his youngest son, Joseph, had been killed, he tore the coat that he was wearing. It was a sign of grief, a sign of sadness, but also a sign of the confusion and sometimes even the anger that we feel when someone we love is taken from our midst. The kriya ribbon which we use today also serves as an outward sign to those that we will meet in the coming days that indeed there has been a tear in the fabric of our lives. So without having to say a word, people will see the ribbon and know how to respond accordingly. Death has taken our beloved Alan Jacobs. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Alan's love, which united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of mercy. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It teaches us of our kinship with the divine, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Psalm 23, the Shepherd's Psalm.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot sheyar bitzeni al menuchot nafshi shovev yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo gam gilach bigit salmavet noirara ki hatayim hadi Shivtecha umishantecha hemayinachamuni Ta'aruch lefanai Shulchan neger tzorerai Dishanta v'shemen roshi kosirevaya Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai kol yemei chayai Veshavti bevit Adonai leorech yamim Adonai roi lo echsar Adonai roi lo echsar
In the inside cover of the pamphlet that you received here in the sanctuary, you'll find the translation of the 23rd Psalm. And I invite you, if you wish, to join together with us. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Alan was so many things to so many people. He was a devoted husband, a father, a grandfather, a friend, an advocate. When I think about Alan, I think of the tremendous smile reflected in the picture on the pamphlet that was ever present, the warmth of his spirit, his good nature, his integrity. And I think it is with Alan in mind that the psalmist wrote and answered the question, Adonai, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts. This was Alan. Who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them. This was Alan. Who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God. This was Alan. Who give their word and come what may, do not retract. Again, Alan. Who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. So it was with our dear Alan. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given and God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one, Alan Jacobs, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Amen. We invite you to take these next few moments to call forward the cherished memories that each of you have of Alan's life and how his love touched each of our hearts in this moment of silent reflection.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember, as we live our days. These are the ways we remember, we remember.
For a tradition that loves the law almost as much as Alan did, we don't really have that many laws for what to do when we lose someone whom we love. We're not really told what to do or what to say because we know that there's no way that we could fully honor a whole life with just one action. And so instead, we're told to tell stories. We're told to continue Alan's life and his legacy by continuing to talk about who he was, the impact he made, and the love that he shared. And so we tell Alan's story, first with his brother-in-law, Mark, and then with his children, Jeff and Mitch, and Claudia and Laura.
Well, this ain't going to be easy. So I'm Mark Mayer. I'm Avery's brother, Alan's brother. I guess legally brother-in-law, but that in-law stuff dissolved a long time ago. Alan Jacobs. Little did I know back in 1961. Wow. I thought I'd get through more than this. I was 11 years old when I met Alan. This man became the most influential person in my entire life. Starting that first day, Avery brings this guy around, and he proceeds to, we're in a baseball field, he proceeds to hit a softball farther than I've ever seen a human being hit a softball. I mean, I'm 11, so maybe I was impressed easily, but he hit it a mile. By the time we found the softball, I came back, Alan's arm is hanging down by his ankle, and they're taking him to the hospital because his shoulder came out, like it always did. I learned Alan was quite the basketball and softball player. Some of you here today, as I understand it, played in those famous Sunday softball games with him in the 50s. And some of you and your parents were in the audience betting on those games, from what I understand. So whether it was rooting for the White Sox, guzzling down Pepsi-Cola, or how to drink Chivas Regal, I learned a lot from Alan in those early years. Alan played several roles for me during my life. He became my personal job creator. He got me a job working for a mob-owned, I hope there's nobody here from this place, a mob-owned vending machine company that was, I was 17 years old and very weird. He got me a job working for the Cook County Highway Department with a very important, skillful job of measuring the road every day. Alan's next job was as the soother to my parents, Alav Shalom, Dave and Shirley, when I moved out west, and he would just continually, from what I understand, tell them, he'll be okay, he'll be fine, he'll be coming back, don't worry about it. And I don't know really what he saw, but he was definitely right. Speaking of Dave and Shirley, Alan was instrumental in getting them into a condo, getting my dad a job at the Skokie Courthouse. He even got my grandmother into a CHA housing project when she needed to do it. Alan stepped out of his job creator and condo developer role when he played one of his more famous positions as the strong man. As my best man at the famous or infamous Detroit wedding that some of you know about, after a slight altercation during the ceremony at the chuppah, don't take this personally, he threatened to break the rabbi's arm during the ceremony. If you're interested, I'll tell you about it later. Then, and perhaps the most important influence he would ever have on me, my late 20s, when I was finally deciding what to do with my life, I saw Alan, the successful, happy husband, father, family man, who also drove some pretty cool cars, and decided, maybe I should be a lawyer too. And, well, 45 years later, you know what happened. Alan, who with Seymour's help, I'm sure, not only got me into law school, thank you, Seymour, was the person who got my first job as a lawyer in the City of Chicago Law Department. Thank you, Seymour, for that, too. And as most of you know, it was during that job that I met Kathy, the love of my life, and she's been quite the influence on me over the years, too. So you can really say, without Alan, there's no Mark and Kathy. Without Alan, there's no Aaron, there's no Daniela, there's no Iggy, there's no Sonny, there's no Owen. So, like I said, he is the most influential person in my entire life. I joined the law firm with Seymour, Harvey, and Alan, and then later Daryl, who just showed up one day and still never left. And I was influenced by Alan in how to be a lawyer. And I know I am not alone as the person whose life was affected by Alan Jacobs. It seems like everyone who knew him, everyone in this room and more, who knew him at one point or another in their life was affected. And I mean majorly, positively affected by Alan Jacobs. Unless, of course, you were his opponent in a probate matter in court, and then you probably have a different opinion of Alan. But speaking of probate court, Alan Jacobs was Mr. Probate. He was respected by all the judges and even his opponents. When a judge in a probate matter needed to appoint an attorney to step in, they called Alan. When other law firms had conflicts of interest and needed another lawyer to step in, they called Alan. Alan was the guy you turned to when you needed an answer or help with anything. It's already happened that a couple weeks ago when Alan wasn't available for us, Mitch and I were trying to figure out what to do, and we looked at each other and said, that's the thing you ask Alan about. And he just wasn't there to help. Alan lovingly took Kathy into our family immediately. He and Avery then became pseudo-grandparents for Aaron and Daniela, going with us to Disney World and all over the places. I know both of my kids, Aaron and Daniela, love Alan and Avery with all their hearts from the day they met them. Speaking of Avery, his love for Avery never diminished. He was always on her side, protecting her no matter the circumstance. It was never just Avery or never just Alan. It was always Avery and Alan. You couldn't say one without the other. Whether it was with financial assistance, a place to live, golf tips, plain old life advice, or his influence just by who he was, how he conducted himself, and his love of family, Alan was always the person you all and I could count on, and everyone knew it. So Alan, the rock of our family, the glue that kept that crazy office together back in the 80s and 90s, and the terminator of probate court. It's going to be very weird and lonely going forward without you. I'll always love you, not only for everything you've done for me and our family, but mostly for you just being Alan and teaching us all how to live and love and live life to the fullest with dignity, humor, and grace. Life won't be the same without you. Rest in peace, Jake.
Guys, please come on. If I don't make the eye contact my uncle did, it's because I might see somebody like Mark, and I'm not going to be able to get through this. Me too. Okay, we're going to do this. Those got to go. Come on, open up. All right. All right. See, now I don't have my glasses on, I can't see anybody. That's great. All right, my dad, the man, and this is going to probably not be as poetic as my uncle because he's a songwriter, and we know this. And, all right, well, he did have a few titles. Alan Jacobs, Mr. Jacobs, Counselor, Jake, Brother, Uncle Alan, Grandpa, Father-in-law, Husband of the love of his life. Best of all, Dad. I gotcha. Yeah, or Pops. I think Jeff started calling him Pops, and it just caught on. It just flew. He is Pops. I want to thank everybody for coming, paying their respects today, and for the incredible outpouring of love our family during this time. The people that were part of Al's everyday life know the competitor he was, and at the same time, the most supportive human to all in our family and beyond that who needed him. Without question, he instilled in me the same, some of his best traits. And I know I wouldn't be the human or coach I became without his love, support, and teachings. I need you to read some of this, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm going to put my glasses on, but I'm not looking up. Let's see.
I got it.
You got it? Okay.
All right.
Coach, get that.
So, okay.
Here, wait.
Where'd you go?
I didn't. You moved it.
Oh, okay. All right, moving on. Okay, but anyway, all right. Now that's all I needed. I think I'm good now. All right. When I told him that I wanted to be a coach, that was one of the craziest days of my life because I'm like, I need to talk to him about not being a lawyer, ever. And his only response was, go for it. And the conversations we had after that, I mean, I got to find this. Okay, well, we started reading books on strategy. He started telling me books that he'd read on strategy. I'd start telling him about books I read about coaching. We were both big Bobby Knight fans. Who would have guessed that with his way? And then, of course, he made sure that if you've ever heard of Daniel Silva, he has everyone, and he got me reading. And so why not read about, a famous Mossad agent kicking butt all over the world? What's more important than that? And so we talk about those books. But he just would never let me forget that there's just way more important things in our work. He was such an example, and just seeing him read books throughout my whole life, I mean, my dad was truly the example of how to be a good human, husband, father, brother, grandfather, uncle, cousin, and so much more. Sports. To say that was a huge part of our life is an understatement. Miss a game of my brothers or mine? Not a chance. Always was there. And as my friends would tell you, you knew he was there. God forbid I didn't hustle onto that field. Everybody knew. But that translated later to Jeff's concerts, my matches. He just was so into our lives. and my mom was right there every step. He really only had one demand, and that was play as hard as you can. I still hear him saying to this day, you hustle. I can't even quote you, man. I just still hear him telling me, man, so loud, like, you hustle on and off that field, punk. Doesn't matter if you pop it up, you hustle. You run out that ball to first base. Man, everything. No hot dogging, you catch with two hands. 1 for 3, you're upset. That's a Hall of Famer, buddy. You gotta be okay with failing. I mean, that's baseball. I mean, who knew that was gonna translate to everything? But it is teaching me the fundamentals, teaching us the fundamentals of baseball, is teaching us the fundamentals of life. Going to White Sox baseball and DePaul basketball games, hundreds of them. Bears every Sunday, playoff hockey and basketball. We didn't really watch regular season hockey and basketball back in the day. Not until Michael Jordan showed up. Then basketball went on. Then when the Blackhawks got moving, then my mom demanded the Blackhawks would be on every time. So we watched those. Watching DePaul basketball on Channel 26, because before Mark Aguirre, who cared to watch DePaul basketball? I mean, it was like Joe Ponsetto and Dave Corzine. So, and very few people my age would know those names. But I was sitting right there, because I was the remote control also, so I was sitting right there in front of the TV set to switch it back and forth. I mean, not only the biggest fan for his kids, no one was a bigger fan of Jaden and Lucas. Megan, Emma, Zach. Whether it was Little League games, the volleyball tournament, standing up for Lucas for senior night, because I had to coach. I had to go. He was there. He walked Lucas out on the field. And then, of course, both of them decided, oh my God, when each one of them called them when they became first-team All-State athletes in their respective sports. I mean, he probably told anybody who'd listen for years. And then both of them followed in my beautiful wife's footsteps and became college athletes. And thank God they got so much more from you, too, because they're both amazing. As for golf, we can get to that later, because at the beginning, golf was not a positive for me at all. So we could talk about that later. It just took so much of his time, like, to go play that game, that I always was like, where's Dad? Oh, he's gone golfing. So it really wasn't positive to begin with. He was definitely Mr. Cool. If you ask any of his nieces, nephews, anybody, he was so cool. I mean, just look at the perfect 10 that was on his arm at every political event, celebration, holiday. They were, just like my uncle said, they were Avery and Alan. They were Alan and Avery. That's who they always were. They were partners. And they were examples to us at how you should be a partner. I mean, from his hairstyle to blowing smoke rings. I mean, he was just cool. Like, even to the day he said, I'm going to quit smoking. And then he just did. He never smoked another cigarette. Like, who does that? Like, he's just like, no, this won't be tough. He just didn't smoke again. Incredible. Yeah, he loved to tell stories about his grandchildren. I don't need to go into all this. I don't want to lose it again. But if you ever were in a conversation where he started talking about these grandkids, just look on that front paper. That was the smile every time. Those grandkids were just unbelievable. Last but not least, Big Al, let's discuss some golf. All right. I think this was my best plan ever, because when I got my first full-time head coaching job, I said to Laura, I said, I need to learn how to play golf better because my dad needs to want to play with me. I mean, I don't want to keep losing all this time. So I bought this set for like $100 and probably pieced together a few clubs from the garage that he would probably go through and go, I'm never using this again. I'm never all that back in that day. And I think that was just my best plan because I got to spend so many hours with him on the golf course. 2-man scrambles, 4-man scrambles, Saturday mornings, midweek summer days, when we were vacation rounds, White Sox outings. How damn special those days always were. Making connections myself through the coaching world and getting to take him onto courses that he'd never played was unbelievable. To be able to do something for him that he hadn't done. For someone who could really just say, I want to do that and go do it, that was incredible. But the plan worked. Probably played a few hundred more rounds over the next 30 years. And just getting to ride in a cart and shoot the shit with Al. I mean, Seymour, how many years do you get to do that? Mark, how many years, right? I mean, how much better is it to just play golf? Like, how many times, right? So, last but not least, I'll never forget all the private conversations, Dad, over the last 7 weeks. All that's left to say is thank you. I'm so happy I got to say that to you before you left. And thank God somewhere along the line I just started listening to you. Thanks for listening to that. I think Jeff and Laura want to say something.
You want to go? All right. I'm not going to be too long here. There's so many stories. I could just start on and on. I think it's not mine, I swear to God. The main theme is we're just really lucky that somewhere early he got a hold of us and convinced us that
That we could be anything.
Can't give up.
yeah. No,
Never give up.
You can do whatever you want in life. It's all there if you work hard enough and you, I don't know. We just bought into it. And, yeah, and it worked.
For both of them.
And when it didn't work, he told you about it too. And I don't know, one just kind of sums up Dad. Along the way somewhere, he played a round of golf. We used to go to Longboat Key every year, and through work or whatever, I knew a guy who invited us onto his country club, who lived nearby Longboat Key, and a Scottish guy. And for years, Dad had a great time. They drank together, they told, they bullshitted, they had so much fun. I was like, glad I came, They were doing their thing. And for years, I'd be in the car with Dad, and when an AC/DC song would come on, I'd say, Dad, you played a round of golf with that guy singing. He said, that's not singing, But anyways, that was Alan. All he cared about really was the golf, but in that situation. But he loved his kids, and our victories were his victories. I don't know. What can you say? Like I said, there's so much. Yeah, he was a mensch. is what he was,
The definition.
for real. So, thanks, everybody, for coming. And, okay, yeah.
Okay. Dad. Family to you did not mean by blood alone. You became my father-in-law over 29 years ago. And when my dad suddenly died almost 16 years ago, you became my physical dad. It was seamless for me to say, Dad. Always there for me with a smile, just as you were for everyone else, unconditionally. I didn't have the opportunity to have final conversations, hugs, kisses with my dad. So having the time with you the last month or so for those things meant the world. And I got to say goodbye to both my dads. Thank you. One final thing. We met with a rabbi the other day, and she asked all of us to describe him in one word. At first, I couldn't think of anything. And then I got in the car, and as I was pulling out, I realized what that one word was. And I think we'd probably all agree on it. And I can hear him saying it, and it would be Ave. That's it.
So I'll say a short something. Alan was a father to me longer than my own father was. And witnessing the right way that things are supposed to be, he taught me in his life as well. And one thing I've taught the boys, my little Judaism all the way from South Africa, is Alan was a tzaddik. And I don't know if anybody knows what a tzaddik is, but Alan was a tzaddik, and that's an earth angel, and he's still a tzaddik. And a true mensch, the definition.
Don't forget your stuff.
Our rabbis taught that all of us have 3 crowns offered to us: the crown of Torah, and the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasized that the crown of a good name is treasured above them all. As the book of Ecclesiastes says, Tov Shem Meshemen Tov. A good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth, health, and even life passes, but a good name is what lasts forever. And it is in this view that the Talmud teaches that monuments need not be built for the righteous, because their deeds become their memorials. They will be remembered and revered for the kindness they have shown, for the love they've given, and they become shining examples of what it means to be a mensch. And as we've heard, Alan had so many good names ascribed to his life. The name of son, the name of brother, the name of husband, of father, of uncle, of grandpa, the name of lawyer and politician, the name of advocate and friend. He had a list longer than we could ever write of good names. He was a person who took responsibility for crafting a better world. He was a person who was eternally loyal. He was kind and supportive, and he kept those whom he loved close. Alan was a born and bred Chicagoan, growing up in Humboldt Park with his parents and sisters. And his kind and generous nature showed early in his life, which earned him the nickname of Candy for his sweetness. It probably didn't help, though, because Lois and Sally quickly made him into their living doll, as he was the baby of the family and soon became treated as just another thing to maybe dress up and to play with. But as we heard, Alan developed his love of sports incredibly early. He played baseball and softball, basketball and football, and apparently he was very good. So good that he and his father often played on the same teams, those teams that some of you were betting on probably. And when he was 6 or 7 years old, he became that die-hard White Sox fan, probably because his father, Jack, brought him to see the Cubs play in a game, and they lost really badly. So he became the White Sox fan instead. But being teammates with his father, it's really what helped him to solidify how close they would become. And it helped them both have a loving bond despite their cheering for different baseball teams. And unfortunately, when playing that pickup game of basketball in high school, Alan injured his shoulder that led to all of those dislocated arms that would be dragging after he hit that home run out of the park. But it didn't stop him from playing all of the sports that he loved, from having those sports bring him closer to the people he loved, from meeting Mark, and from being able to teach Mitch and Jeff. And it's true, though, that sports were not his only love. Sports were not his only focus. After he injured his shoulder, he went to college at DePaul and then to law school at John Marshall. And amidst making his way through school, Alan and Avery were set up on that date. Thank goodness he had good timing, because Avery was so dedicated to her studies that she maybe missed a couple calls, but he knew to call on a Sunday in between her study sessions, and the two of them clicked right away. They went out for coffee and spent all night together laughing and sharing stories. The two of them even went to go see the Rat Pack on one of those earliest dates, and it became a bit of a tradition for them to go and to take in all that Chicago had to offer. They would go on outings with friends for good food and to see great entertainers like Sinatra, like Lenny Bruce, and they would go out to create memories together that would bring them through their more than 60 years of marriage. Within a year of that first phone call, Alan and Avery eloped, and then celebrated their marriage with a celebration at the Webster Hotel on Thanksgiving in 1962. As Avery tells it, the two of them spent their first years of marriage becoming people. Alan shifted his school to nights and work during the day. He became a probate clerk in the state's attorney's office and became very involved in the Chicago Democratic Party. He spent nearly almost every Monday night, for whether he was living in the ward or after they had moved to the suburbs, he spent almost every Monday night at that ward meeting. But Alan never took it for granted that many, if not most, of the leaders of Chicago Dems knew him through his father. But he still became involved in his own right and made a name for himself as a leader in his community. Through his work in law and politics, Alan's stellar reputation developed. People came to know him as smart, as diplomatic, as calm. He was reliable, and he became that go-to guy whenever someone was in need. But not everything was school and work for Alan. He and Avery sought out new experiences. They traveled, they connected with friends. They even learned line dances and the hustle in a basement dance class at the Y. Once a month or so, the two of them had dinner with friends, often trying a new restaurant or having people over for poker and game nights. And Alan knew the blessing of good friends, and he always strove to be a good friend himself. He was always present and always charming, and he always enabled his friendships to stand the test of time and to span decades, even continuing into his passion for golf and the divot diggers at the club, which I thought divot diggers wasn't something that you might want to do, but apparently this crew became like royalty at the club. And as Alan and Avery welcomed Mitch and Jeff into their lives, they moved to the suburbs for maybe a little bit more living space, maybe a little bit of a different school for them. But moving out of the city didn't stop how dedicated Alan was to Chicago. And nothing got in the way of his most important job, the job as father. Alan was involved in the boys' school. He taught them how to play all of their sports, spent some time coaching, and a lot of time being their cheerleader from the stands. And aside from those Monday night meetings, Alan was always there for Jeff and Mitch. And he showed them in every possible way that his love was unconditional. He instilled in them the same sense of hard work that he himself had, and told them that if you worked hard, you could be anything you wanted to be. And that if you didn't quite get that goal that you were striving for, then it was because you learned something and you would do something differently the next time. Ellen helped both of them learn that even though they might have connections that got them started, their work ethic and perseverance was what would see them through. Something that became especially important with all of those summer jobs that they had at the Chicago Park District or at the attorney's office, even if Mitch's supervisor had him working over holidays with some maybe extra tedious tasks, or Jeff's middle of the night assignments for the beach bathroom cleanup crew. They knew to see everything through to completion. Alan also managed to make some of his more memorable clients at Schwartz and Zabin into opportunities to show his love for his sons. When managing the estate of a professional baseball player, suddenly baseball cards, collectibles, would come home with them. When Jeff had a gig in Gary, Indiana, Alan and Avery got a bus together of all of their friends and colleagues to go cheer him on. When Mitch was playing beach volleyball, Alan and Avery cheered there too. In truth, the two of them were the most dedicated fans of their sons from the moment they were born. And then, as grandfather, the best parts of Alan became even brighter. Suddenly, any rule he might have had with his own children simply became, just don't get hurt. With Aaron and Daniela, he got to test the waters of letting his inner kid out. And with Jaden and Lucas, Megan, Emily, and Zach, all bets were off. Sure, Alan was generally good-natured with babies, and babies loved him back. But who else could find such joy in playing, "I got your nose," or swiping icing off of cakes, or even teaching the youngest generation how to really get your fill out of a buffet? Even if they might have been physically distant, living in different states, Alan and Avery did everything in their power to make sure that they were close to their grandchildren. When Megan and Emily performed for maybe only 2 minutes of a production in a dance performance, they flew to Dallas just for those 2 minutes and sat through the whole production. They gathered everyone together at their place in Florida. Alan had a nickname for everyone, and a seat at a White Sox game for everyone, and a seat at his table for everyone. Alan knew professionally and personally what it meant to fight for the most important things in life, and to him, nothing was more important than his family. Alan knew that he could be imperfect and stubborn. He even claimed to have allergies for foods that he just didn't like strawberries and turkey. But Alan also knew what it meant to show love in every moment of his life. He was kind and he was funny. He took his responsibilities to his community and to the world seriously. He strove for excellence and sought out real and honest connections with people. There was nowhere Alan could go where someone wouldn't stop him to chat, and he would know their name and their kid's name, whether it was at City Hall or at the golf club. He knew them every time. This week in our Torah, we read the portion in Deuteronomy called Shoftim, called Judges. And in it, Moses reminds the Israelites of how to keep judges, advocates, and witnesses honest, and how to keep the legal system just and equitable for all. It's fitting that this is the portion that will be forever tied to Alan's memory and his legacy. Because, in truth, Alan didn't need a reminder. Instead, he was the reminder. He became the reminder of all that we need to know of what it means to stay true to the values and to the people who make us who we are. He will always be a reminder that families show up for one another, that friendships carry us through hard times, and that each of us has a responsibility to make the world better than we found it. Every one of us remembers Alan Jacobs, and every one of us will remember what he taught by living his life to be a good life and to be a full life. In the depths of grief, keep these best parts of Alan's presence and his memory strong, so that those who knew him and loved him may rely on that strength. We grieve for what might have been, but indeed we celebrate what was. O God, bring consolation to his family, his friends, and his community. Help us to raise them from the depths of sorrows, slowly and lovingly. Help us to lead them from this night of desolation to the dawn of a new day. Then may the memory of their husband and father, their grandfather, their uncle, their friend, then that memory will be able to return gently and peacefully to their hearts. May Alan's memory live among each of us, allaying our grief and instructing us in the ways of living, and helping each and every one of us to mind the mystery of eternal life. Zichrono Livracha, may Alan Jacobs' memory always and forever be a blessing. Amen. Our tradition gives us prayers and psalms to say when we feel lost, when we feel a loss. And I believe that these are intentionally crafted to go together, because there are two prayers that we say during a memorial service, a funeral, during a Yizkor service, or at Shiva, that go hand in hand. The first, El Malei Rachamim, becomes a prayer for Alan's eternal soul, for his soul to find comfort, for his soul to find care and love in God's presence. But perhaps its more familiar partner, which we will continue when we reach the cemetery, is Mourner's Kaddish. And whereas El Malei Rachamim becomes our prayer for Alan, Mourner's Kaddish is not a prayer that speaks of death. It actually speaks of life and blessing. And I believe that this prayer, going hand in hand, becomes Alan's prayer for all of us to continue to live our life, to continue to live his legacy filled with blessing. That as we bless Alan, that as we continue to live our lives, he continues to enjoy the benefits of the blessing of knowing each and every one of you. El Malei Rachamim. Please rise as you are able.
El male rachamim, shochen b'amramim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. עם קידושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, לנשמת אפרים בן יעקב שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. בצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו. וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
On the inside of our pamphlets, we find the translation of El Maleh Rachamim at the bottom of the page. We read together. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Alan Jacobs, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
Mitch, when you were talking, I remember my father, Seymour, and myself, and your dad and you playing a match at the member guest. You remember? I'd love a rematch. So the interment's going to take place at Shalom Memorial Park, and we're going to have a funeral procession that's going to form on Hap Road facing south. The hearse is going to pull down about 2 to 3 blocks. If you're driving in the funeral procession, either get an orange safety sticker for the inside portion of your right windshield, or we also have some flags available. Drive with your high beam headlights on and your flashers on. Please drive defensively. You are allowed to go through a red light, but that doesn't mean that people aren't on their phones not paying attention. So please ask everyone, if you just don't go do it automatically and assume that a car is not going to notice that there's a procession. After the interment, the family's going back to Cappy's American Grill, which I understand Alan used to frequent almost on a daily basis. So they will be receiving people there from 4:30 till 8. That information's in the programs. And the following have been asked to act as pallbearers. You sure you want Mark? Mark will be an honorary pallbearer. Please don't touch the casket. Then Cliff Capson, Larry Capson, Lucas Jacobs, Jacob Isaacson, and Ricky Strom. Initially, the pallbearers, you'll need to follow behind the casket. Mark, you can just stay seated. Just take the casket out the side. If everyone would please rise at this time, we'll bring the casket out.